Okay, welcome to the second part in the Space Sidescroller Godot series. If you haven't seen the first part, you can go back on my YouTube channel. You should be able to do the first part. We add in the player, and basically that's all we get done is we just get the player moving up and down, and we change the background color. And we're going to have all those assets, and they're going to be provided in my Google Drive folder that's shared, so it will be in the description. You can go download those there. Let's get started. So we're gonna make it so our player ship can shoot. So first thing we need to do is import our bullet sprite into Godot. So open your file explorer and navigate wherever you saved your bullet sprite. I saved it in my Godot tutorial assets folder. I'm just going to drag it on top of Godot in my file system. It should appear right there. If that doesn't work, just open another file explorer, split screen them like so. Navigate to your Godot folder, which would be in here for me, and then I just drag it over and copy it. Didn't move it. If you want to just copy it, hold control while you're dragging, and it should just copy it. So okay, so now that we have our bullet in here, we're gonna press this little plus button right next to the world scene to create a new scene. We're gonna add a custom node, do sprite. Now we're gonna set our sprite texture to bullet.png, so you can just drag that into here. Or you can press this little arrow and press load, and you can do that. And let's zoom into it. If your bullet is blurry, what you're going to want to do is you want to re-import it as 2D pixel. And yeah, that should fix that. We're going to rename our sprite in the scene tree to player_bullet. This way we know that's this bullet coming from our player, so if we do implement bullets that enemies shoot, we'll be able to differentiate those. So now we're going to add a child node, add an area 2D, and we're going to add another child node of that area, and we're going to do a collision shape 2D. So now we should have our sprite, and then under that sprite, our area and our collision shape under that area. Set the collision shape, hit this little arrow right next to it, and set to a new rectangle shape 2D. Hit the 3 dots up here, and make sure you're using pixel snap, so it snaps to each pixel. You'll be able to tell if it's not using pixel snap, because you're going to have this weird, like, smooth. We don't want that. We want the snap to each pixel, so make sure you have that on. And just resize it to the size of your sprite. And just use these red dots to do that. Okay, so I'm going to toggle the visibility by clicking the little eye right next to the collision shape so I don't have to see it. And I'm going to rename our area to like hitbox or something like that, so we know that the area is being used as the hitbox for the bullet. So now we're going to attach a script to the bullet by pressing the script icon right here. And just press create. Now we're in our bullet script, so we can select all of this and then delete it. Don't delete the extend sprite. This needs to be here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get our bullet moving across the screen to the right. So to do that, we're going to have to move the position. So we're going to do function underscore process delta. And I'm going to make a variable right here called variable speed. I'm going to set it to like 100. That's how fast our bullet's going to move. We're going to use that variable. And then we're going to do global underscore position plus equals speed. And so right now, let's just save right now. So press Control S and you can save as a scene. or you can hit scene, save scene, and just save it into your file system. So right now the problem is if we do this without timesing the speed by delta, it's going to move as fast as our computer can compute it, which we don't want. We want delta just makes it so for each computer it'll move at the same speed no matter how fast the processing power is on that computer. So that's what we're going to do. So make sure you times it by delta so it doesn't go really fast. And we're going to test it by just running the scene by pressing the scene run icon. Play scene. You can press F6. Ooh. Oh, I see what I did. So make sure you do global position .x. We only want to move the x position on the global position. So the problem is global position is a vector variable which contains an x and y value, and we're trying to add to those two values by speed and delta, but it doesn't know which value we want to do, and this is only a 1-point vector, so you can't really add them together. And so you want to do .x, so we're only using one of the values into the vector, not both of them. So now you want to press the run button, and you see a bullet goes across the screen. Yeah, so this button is what you want to do to run it, and it looks just fine. So now we need to make it so our player can shoot the bullets. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to go click the little this icon right here by the player. Just click that, and this should open the player up. And now I think I moved it a little bit. That's not what I wanted. Here, I'm just going to use pixel snap. I'm just going to snap it back to the origin. I must have moved it. Well, make sure you don't just move the spray. You want to move this, and to make sure that you move this entire object rather than moving the sprite, you want to hit this little icon, and just make sure that whenever you're trying to drag it, it'll only drag this node and not the other nodes under it. So I'm just going to make sure that's at position 0, 0. And now we need to make it so you can shoot the bullet. So we can just create the bullet in the player by setting up an input function. The problem with that is that once we create that, it's going to go under our player and inherit our player's values. And so if the bullet is stored under our player, the problem is it's going to follow our position. So when the ship moves up and down, the bullet's going to move up and down too because it's inheriting our position variables. We don't want that. So what we need to do is we need to place it outside of the player scene. So now we're kind of depending on another node to create it from. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create our bullet in the world and not in our player. And so to do that, we are going to use a signal. So I'm going to create 2 extra lines up here. I'm going to do signal creates bullets. I'm going to do, I think it's signal create bullet, and then I'm going to do a parentheses, and I'm going to pass some arguments. So we want the bullet that we want to be created. We also want the position. We can't just write position or else it's going to make it blue, so I'm just going to write pause. And we also, I think that's all we need is the bullet and the position. So now we have set up that we have made a signal that is called by using create bullet and using these 2 values, the bullet that you want to create and the position you want to create it in. Okay, so now, actually I'm going to write location. That's better. That's a better word for it. So now we need to tell it when to send the signal. Because if we try to access, the reason why we're using a signal is if we try to access the world directly, if that world doesn't exist, we're going to get like errors and stuff. But signals, they're just sent out and it doesn't care if it gets received or not. It's just sent out. So that's basically what a signal is you're basically sending out information and other objects can pick up on that signal and process that information. So Now we've set up our signal, but we need to emit the signal. So to do that, we're gonna go in our project settings first. Hit project settings, go to input map, right next to general. I'm just gonna close down all of these by pressing the little arrow right next to it. And I'm gonna make a new one, new action called shoot. Then you want to press add right here. Okay, so now we have a new one that's down here, a new action. I'm gonna press add. I'm gonna do mouse button. So press add, the mouse button at the bottom. I want to do device 0, left button, add. Okay, so now we have a shoot input. So I'm gonna close out of this and I'm gonna add some more. Let's do an if statement now. So we need to check if that input's being pressed. So if inputs dot is action, and we're gonna want to do just pressed. Don't just do pressed. If you do the normal is action pressed, it's gonna check if it's pressed every frame and it's gonna execute the code under it every single frame. So that means if we held down the mouse button, it's going to keep shooting bullets every single frame, which we don't want. We want it to be only created only once. And so if it's just pressed, it only executes the code once it's being pressed. So it only gets executed once, other than for how long it's, because in the other one it would just do it forever unless you let go of it. It'll just keep going. So you want to do is action just press shoots. Do a colon right here, and we're gonna want to do emit underscore signal, and now we want to set the signal that we want to emit, create bullet, and we want to specify our bullet, which we don't have yet. So how do we access our player bullet scene, which is in our file system in our player? Well, we can store that in a variable. The variable just stores the information. So I'm going to enter a couple times right here at the top. I'm going to type in variable player. I'm just going to call it bullet. Variable bullet equals preload. And then you want to do you want to go grab the bullet.tscn path. If that doesn't show up, like if you're not able to see all the paths when you're writing that, what you want to do is you just click on this in the file system and then copy all of this. Or for an easier method, you can just type in preload and then drag in the file and drop it right there, and they'll just give it the path. So this is the path in our file system that links to our scene. So now our bullet is that scene. So now we want to do bullets, and the location, what we want to do, because this is the first argument in here, is what bullet do we want to create? Well, if we set a variable called bullet, and we have our path. So we are creating this bullet as this variable. And location, we just want to do our position. So do global position. So we emit the signal, create bullet, that's the signal that we set up here, with the data of our bullet that we have, the bullet variable that we have the scene, and our global position for the location. So now we have that signal emitted, but now the game needs to collect that signal and now create the bullet. So save the script. We're going to go into our world and hit the script button. We're going to make a world script. Press create. Now we can remove all this. Don't remove the extends node 2D. We need that in order to not have errors. So now what we're going to do is, well, first we need to connect the signal, because this isn't going to know. The world is not going to know that this create bullet is a signal function. Doesn't know it's a function, so we're going to type it in. It's just going to give us, well, it's going to think it's going to say it's a normal function, but it's not going to know it's linked to this. So go in our player tab. Make sure you're in our player tab. This is very important. yeah, make sure you're in our player tab, because now you're going to go to node. And if you're in groups, just switch over to signals, and you'll be able to see the signals. And you want to do, we have our own custom signal right here, and the object comes with like different signals already built in, like mouse entered and mouse exited. We want to do our create bullet, and we want to connect that, but we don't have our world scene up here to connect it to because it doesn't see it. So press cancel. We're going to go in our world, select our player node, do create bullet in the signal, and now we see our world because now we're in our world scene accessing our player, and it sees that that's the parent node. And so now we can create that, and you can see it's creating a special function method underscore on underscore player underscore create underscore bullet using, and it's going to automatically create us a function. So press connect, and now we have our signal that we are emitting connected to our world, and it's not going to check if that signal gets emitted by the player. So now we're going to add some of the, so we can access these variables by just writing them in here, and it's going to get the variable that we're passing in right here. So we're going to do variable bullets underscore instance equals bullets dot instance. So now we're getting a we're setting a variable to the bullet.instance. So now we can access the bullets variables that we have instanced. Because if we just try to access the bullet directly, it's just going to access the scene, which we don't, which will just access the data of the scene. We need it to access the instanced scene, so we have the direct one to get the variables from. So now we have that. Now we need to specify where we want it in the scene tree, and so we just want to add it as a child of the world. And since we're in the world script, it's automatically gonna know when we type in add underscore child. It's gonna know we're talking about the world because it just assumes you're talking about the self object unless you have another node and then dot. So we're gonna add it a child of our world, and we are adding our bullet instance as a child. I spelled that wrong, so I'm just gonna put that there. I forgot the end. It's very vital that you have all your variables names correct, or else it's not, you're gonna get errors. So now we added it as the child of our world. Now we want to set the location that we have, this location variable. So bullet instance dot global underscore position equals location. So now the world is getting our function to create our bullet and saying the location of the position. So now I'm just going to press run. Let's see how this goes. Now we can shoot. It works just fine. Now if we try to run the player scene by itself, and I hit this run icon that just runs the scene, I won't be able to shoot bullets because it's emitting the signal, but nothing's getting that signal because there is no world object to get that. Which, if we try to automatically add the bullet as the parent of the player, if we were running the player scene by itself, we would get errors. So that's the nice thing about instancing with signals, is you don't get errors whenever you are instancing with another node. So that basically concludes this tutorial about shooting. It's very nice just to make sure that each scene works separate, or else you can encounter even more errors whenever running the game, like in different scenes. And so instancing with signals is gonna do the best for us. So yeah, that's the end of our tutorial. Hope you guys liked the tutorial. Hope you guys learned something new. And in the next tutorial, we're going to be adding enemies that are basically, they're like bullets, but they move towards the player. and we're going to be adding a enemy spawner. I think that's what we're going to get in our next tutorial. Yep. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.